Also, I don't believe we've met this year, so Happy New Year to everyone from Africode. Today, we are joined by two of our fantastic mentors. We're joined by Haya Karui and Aisha. Hi, Aisha.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This is a real pleasure.
So, just to kick it off real quick, let's hear a bit about yourself, and I can go first to kind of like set it on. So, I'm Goodness, but really go by Damola. I work at Goldman Sachs as an engineer, and I am from Abuja, Nigeria. I majored in engineering in college, and I currently live in New York. So we can go with Higher than Aisha.
Sure. I'm so sorry. I hate to correct you. My name is Hajar. So it's like Heather with a J. I hate correcting people, but don't worry about it. It's fine. I heard all sorts of pronunciations. It's okay. Okay. So I'm Hajar. Currently based in London. I did my undergrad in the US. So I was at Drexel University for 5 years. I did my bachelor in computer science. I minored in neuroscience as well. I worked for a year at Ernst & Young as a cybersecurity consultant in New York City, which was great. And I moved in 2019 to London to do my Master's of Research at Imperial College London in neuroscience. I just graduated recently, so this past September. Did some research. Now I'm still in research. I'm a data manager as of this week, still at Imperial. Yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Aisha?
Congratulations on graduating, by the way.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aisha. I grew up in Abuja also. I came to college. I came to the US for college in 2016. I went to University of Wyoming, where I studied computer engineering. Graduated a bachelor's last May, and I've been working with Twitter full-time since July.
Oh, and I'm from Tunisia. So that's the north of Africa. I'm like half Tunisian, half Moroccan.
Got you. Welcome. So, to kick it off, how did you guys decide to go into computer science on your end?
Aisha, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I could go first. Mine is, I don't know, just interesting. So growing up, like I was watching lots of movies, and I honestly got inspired. I had an inspiration for robotics through movies. I don't know if any of you have watched like iRobot. And disclaimer, I'm not a fan of robots taking over the world. That's not what I'm saying. I just thought it was cool that robots could like do stuff and you could program it and the interaction. I was like, that's pretty cool. Like I want to work with a robot. I want to build a robot. And really that was like my inspiration to go into computer engineering, just based on that. And so, after high school, I actually went to college or started going to university in Nigeria for a year while I was like processing my admissions in the US. And so I was at University of Ilorin studying computer science. And then, I like applied for computer engineering here, and that really was the start of everything for me.
I really admire people who have this, drive since, just knowing like where to go and, what to do from the very beginning. My path wasn't so clear, but goodness, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say that's fantastic from Aisha. I think so. Hers was iRobot, mine was Transformers. I always wanted to build a Transformer, and that's how I somehow got looped into this field. But yes, Haya, please go on. Sorry.
Right. So I didn't have such a conventional path. Like, I mean, I didn't honestly, okay, I used to hate computer science before. So high school, that's when we started taking classes. And I think it was because the way they introduced it, right off the bat, we started with Turbo Pascal. I'm not sure if any of you was familiar with that. Very confusing. And then I had to, for the national exam, computer science as well. It's like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Might as well just fail. I didn't fail, obviously. And then I went to, so I applied for college in the US. And I was a math major initially. And I swore to myself that I will not sign up for the computer science class. Like, there was no way, absolutely no way. Anyway, the first day on my curriculum, I see a computer science class, and it was mandatory. okay, this is amazing. I'm like halfway across the world and I have to take a computer science class. That was like my number one problem, really. But okay, I was like, okay, fine, I'll give it a go. It's gonna be in English because I did it in French before. New environment, new professor. So by the second semester, I ended up falling in love with it. I'm assuming also it was also the professor who conveyed it really well. It was also a woman. She was pushing for women in computing and science in general. So that was really nice. So that is my story, computer science. I did have like a mini crisis midway through my third year, but I'll talk about that later because that's what it led me to be here now.
That's fantastic, actually. I think it's like you said, there's always the more conventional standpoint, but the truth is a lot of people are winging it and are still successful. So that shout to you, hi, shout. To go a bit more deeply into your job, what are your current technical specialties and what you do in your day-to-day? And what does that entail at a very high level?
All right, Shal, I'm going to bounce the ball back at you. Let's do this.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Technical specialty. So I really just majorly do back-end work. What that entails on a day-to-day really is, I guess, building and maintaining systems. So specifically just some background on like my team and what we do at Twitter. I work for the Developer and Enterprise Solutions org. So at large, the org is in charge of, or the org works on the public Twitter APIs. I don't know if any of you are familiar with things. So we have products that developers on Twitter interact with. Like for instance, now there's the quote tweet function, right? But before it was an official Twitter feature, there was this Nigerian who actually created I don't know, it's a button app that worked with Twitter, and what it did is that it would pretty much do the same thing, right? But before Twitter picked that up, it was a developer who kind of worked on that feature, interacting with the public Twitter APIs. Some other customer of the public Twitter API is just enterprise level customers. So for instance, Google, it could be Microsoft. They want to know what's happening on Twitter really, because a lot of stuff that goes down, people interact, there's lots of information on Twitter, right, regarding things happening all over the world. And so, at times it's useful for companies to, know about what's happening. And so specifically, I work on the streaming team. So my team works with products that help with real-time delivery of tweets. So for instance, one of our products could be I want to know about, everyone tweeting from Laramie with a specific hashtag or with a specific keyword, and you can put in all these filters and get results in real time, about things that match your search or your query. So on the day-to-day, really, that involves, I guess, especially for junior devs like me, a lot of pairing. So, we have user stories, we have 2-week sprints. So we have these are things we want to get done, in 2 weeks as a whole team. And so we really just everyone kind of just bits, does some parts, right? And so, we have daily stand-ups where we check in and talk about progress, what we did yesterday, today, or, blockers if we have any. We have meetings regarding just goals and just general team alignment. So the whole team is on the same page about what we're working towards, what we hope to achieve, what are our timelines, what are deadlines, those kind of things. But yeah, specifically in terms of technical workarounds, Twitter is very Scala heavy. So most of backend is done in Scala. And to me, honestly, I was it was very weird when I found out about it, because when I met Twitter, that was the first time I heard about this language Scala. I was like, wait, what? I have never heard about this. And I was in my third year of college or something like that. So I just thought that was interesting. I'm going to pass it over to you, Heather.
Thank you. That's amazing. It sounds like a lot of work, and it's nice to hear. It's just you must feel like an expert, It's nice. Okay. My day-to-day is, I don't know if I have a day-to-day because I work with researchers, and being a researcher myself, really, imagine me honestly on Thursday I woke up and I was gonna work from home, and then the professor I work with, which is a neurologist, he's like, hey, do you want to meet today? So I had to take the shuttle and go to the hospital to meet him there. So I just hopped from hospital to hospital. Basically what I do now, like my official title is data manager. So what I'm going to do for the Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis tissue bank, which is the tissue bank in the UK where all the donations come to. And what I'm going to be doing is basically building the database, maintaining that, talking to all these different people in the register who are using that data. It's really messy at the moment. I'm not really sure how they've been doing it, but as you know, in your universities, stuff are not like super, like nothing is centralized. There's not a lot of consistencies across like different groups and labs, and so I'm gonna really do my best to bring some order to that. That would be nice. It's also really nice to know be a neuroscientist per se, and also like the tech person. And so, because it's hard to be like on the ground if you don't understand what the other person is doing and you're trying to build this tool for them, it's not going to work. So it's nice to kind of like go back and forth on that. Like, I understand what you're trying to do, but also, this technology is like, it's better if we do it this way, because you find some stubborn people who are very adamant and like very resistant to change. But yeah, so again, that's like a typical week/day. But what I've also been doing a lot of machine learning. So we have a ton of data, and so machine learning is the best way to go, especially on fMRI, which is magnetic resonance imaging data. Ton of projects going on right now, so I'm not going to go bore you with the details, but yeah, I'd say database and machine learning for now. And my favorite thing is Python, and I'm trying to get the lab to stop using MATLAB because it's very deprecated and not open source.
I am with you there. Python over MATLAB any day.
Yes.
Also, you guys are both working on very amazing things. One person at Twitter, the other person trying to code a brain, which is fantastic. And in both your experiences, I can imagine, and Aisha, you alluded to this a bit, how when you were learning computer engineering in school, you never experienced Scala. Are there any other things you can say, key differences in learning about coding, computer science development in school versus using it in professional life? Are there any key differences you can help point out on your end?
Yeah, there's one major one that has stuck with me, and that's really, I don't know, like when you're in school, you always have projects or you have this, and they're like, oh yeah, build XYZ, and you have to like, most times you like start from scratch, and like you and a team member like building it all like ground up. But realistically, like honestly, on a day-to-day, like you're working on existing code. So like it's a whole different skill set. Like it's one thing to like be the sole proprietor, like, like be the first person and like, build something from like, the ground up. It's another thing to be able to like go into an existing code base that someone else that you don't even know, that might not even be working at the company right now, has built, and then like, go in there and make changes or tweak a thing, or like, like fine tune it to like serve the goal you want to serve, right? Because I think that's something that's not taught in school a whole lot is, when you're working in a company in the industry, a lot of times you either build on code people have already built on, or like you work with like, libraries that, it could also be open source libraries. It could also just be like internal libraries and internal tools. I feel like there's a lot of that doesn't get stressed in school. And that's something that, you come into the industry and like, wait, why is this? This is different from what, my past 4 years or however long you've been in school for.
Yeah, you touched on really good points there. Yeah, in classes and in projects, at uni, you're kind of building the mold to put something in it, right? And the industry is kind of the opposite. You come in, there's stuff in there, you have to adapt to it. There's data in there, you have to build a tool that can deal with it. And data out there is not as clean as what they give you as an example in uni. So I think, yeah, that's kind of, it is a big challenge.
So just to piggyback off that a bit, are there any specific lessons you've learned early on in your career? How are you with working with data, and Aisha with backend development? are there any lessons you learned earlier in your career that now you think the only way to leave you is if you're dead? And I put this way, one of my friends, who's also an Africode mentor, he works at Microsoft, and he told me about how he released code into production that basically shut down the system. And it was almost the CEO that gave him a call, like, hey, what's going on here? And it was like a very simple mistake. Like, it took them like 10 minutes to clean up. But that was one of those like very early lessons that he was like, yeah, I am never making this mistake again. So I was just curious. Paya, do you mind starting with this one?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't remember any big like mess up, I want to put it that way. Give me a minute. Not saying I didn't mess up before, and maybe because I'm thinking of a big things like Microsoft scale wise. Yeah, give me a minute.
It doesn't have to be big to me. It just has to be something like you feel like since you learned it, it's never going to leave you. But also, Aisha, if you're ready, you can also go now while we wait for Haya.
Yeah, sure, I can talk a bit. I guess first I want to say is I find it interesting, it's like early on in your career. I still feel like I'm early on in my career, so I'm still learning these things. That's just putting that out there. Something else I was also going to say regarding like, your example of like Microsoft, I was like, honestly, that's also one thing I've low-key learned from like things like that are going to happen, right? And I think what's more important is what happens next, like what, how does someone react to it? How does someone learn from it, grow from it, and make sure that, that doesn't happen again. Or if that happens again, it's definitely not like for the same reason or like, anything of that sort kind of a thing. But I think something that I would say, and this is maybe a bit less technical, that I would say is a lesson that I've learned and hopefully will stick with me for the rest of my career, is that we as individuals are really responsible for our growth. Like, we have managers, right? So like we have people, making sure we succeed, and that's really their job, right? That's their, that's what they're trying to achieve. But also like you have to take responsibility for like your growth in terms of like if you, for instance, want to specialize in a specific skill or, want to learn about something, like, like go out there, explore, find mentors who work at your company, who work elsewhere. And I mean, I want to throw it out there that I think you all are doing a good job being that you're, at this program now, you have mentors, you're serving as mentors to other people, either way. But I think really like you have to be intentional about your growth of like, okay, well, you set, goals for yourself in collaboration with your manager, of course, but also just being intentional, because something I've seen in the industry is like, at times people are like, oh, I'm just, going to keep working and, I'm going to like keep producing and being productive and things. And yeah, that's a fine thing. But if you're not having this, core discussions with your manager and making sure you're on the same page about like, timeline for promotions and, leveling up and like a bunch of these things, like things won't just magically happen. Your manager is not going to be like, oh yeah, hey, you want to get promoted right now? Like, not typically, right? Except if you have like a really good manager. And that's, that's also something that's also on that lesson is really, a lot of times like teams vary, right? You can like have a good team and like I don't say your career is dependent on your manager, but to some extent it really is, right? Like you could have this great manager who's supportive, who helps you find opportunities, who works well with you, and that's great. And you can, end up in a crappy situation where your manager just really isn't it, right? And I don't know, you kind of have to be conscious about that and like, check that you have a good manager, and if you don't, then find a way to work through that, or I don't know, looking into alternatives or maybe getting guidance from other people or what have you. But I guess my long story short is managers matter, and you have to be intentional about your growth in the industry.
Yeah, 100%. I love what you just said, and it brought me back to a very bad memory / souvenir. Yeah, I had this like one manager. It's true, like if you have a good manager, good for you, but also stand up for yourself. And if you want something, you have to talk to them and get it, because as much as you want something for yourself, they're not going to want it as much as you do for yourself, basically. But yeah, this manager I've had was during my first co-op, so my first internship as a computer science student. He basically came up to me and said, look, guys, this is going to be rough, okay? But, he said, you are a woman in computing, right? And you don't look homosexual and you don't look whacked, as in like with tattoos and stuff. Oh yeah. Make all the faces. Yeah, this is true. And I'm only starting to make peace with it now. You're neither this nor that. So maybe you should do business or something. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like, I honestly, my body shut down. It was on a nice sunny Friday afternoon. So I was like, I froze. So I go home. The whole weekend, I'm going through Drexel's catalog, looking for other majors. Or maybe I don't fit, maybe this, maybe that, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, he changed my, he didn't really change my mindset, but like just the way I looked at myself, and it stuck with me for like a good 2 or 3 years. I had trouble going into I had trouble like more like psychologically going into the next internship 6 months later and all that. So just to tell you, and I am very sad that I never confronted him about it, and that I've never actually reported it to the HR people at Drexel, because they have to monitor who are the employers of their students, right? So yeah, guys, one thing that I want to tell you is, if someone is acting like that towards you, just look at them as an obstacle. You're in my way. Get the hell out of my way. Just let me do my thing. And yeah, just don't let it get to you. That's my message.
First off, I'm sorry you have to go through that. That is terrible. But it also, in a weird way, provides a next segue into our next set of questions, which is difficulties in the tech space. And I'm curious what difficulties you faced, either being a Black person, a woman in tech, being an immigrant. And I can start off if it helps. For a while, every professional decision I made on my end, I always used to filter it with the lens of, how is this going to affect my work visa? Now, that is not a fun way to pursue interests, because it really limits your windows on stuff that you're interested in, you can actually work on. And it's something I've generally have had to find ways to wiggle around and come to terms with on a variety of different things. And this is just like one of the many difficulties I've faced being an immigrant, working in tech. So I'm curious, and you can pick either or something that encapsulates all of them. And anyone can feel free to go first on this one.
I can go. So yeah, that was honestly that thing that the little story anecdote, call it whatever you want. Nothing topped that after that. Unfortunately, you don't want something worse than that happening. So yeah, the visa stuff, yeah, it's always like, I guess, well, in a way, I always felt a bit privileged that I was in the computer science, right? What could happen to us, right? We're not like the arts majors or like political science or whatever. So that was nice. But then also, being a woman, it's always, you feel it every time you walk into a classroom. I don't know, the group of guys working on a project, you always get mansplained everything. Senior design was also a struggle because, I was with like 3 other guys. 2 of them were quite the stereotype, I would say. I think, it's just, I think you're always, and it's sad to say, but, you can't really change the majority of people, but you're always going to get that look of, you're the minority. Like, do you fit here? Like, how do you feel, about staying here forever with these people? But I think you just make your own you pave your own path. That's how I see it. Aisha, back at you.
I think that's really good advice in terms of like paving your path. But regarding difficulties, I guess I can start off with like women in tech, and really just as Hedja said, it's really a thing of like you look around and you're like, oh yeah, I see like 2 other women in this class. Like, like for instance, I remember like one of my classes they had like about 40 students, and that was like senior design, and we had like 6 females all in all, and I don't know, it even got bad at one point because we like split the senior design into like 2 sections. I didn't even realize that at the time until like someone made some comment, and I kind of looked around the room and I was like, I am the only girl in this class of like 20 people, like just 19 other guys. It's like, interesting. I don't know, it's kind of weird because at times like it's not even something, I feel like it's not something I notice a whole lot. So a little background story, I'm only girl, I have 4 brothers, and so like being surrounded by guys is something like I kind of grew up with. Like I was your typical tomboy, playing soccer, playing basketball, doing all of that in like high school, and I was labeled that a lot, and I was like, sure, okay, like rolling with it, and I definitely got some of those comments or remarks when in high school I was like, oh yeah, I want to do computer science or this and that, and they were like, oh yeah, there she goes again, like being a tomboy. And like even right from like high school classes, I remember because typically in Nigeria, you have like, there are some of these elective classes where you have to decide between X and this. And one of the elective was data processing or home economics. And so I was interested in computer science. Like I went to data processing, right? And I was the only girl, like it was me and literally like all the other guys in the class. And then all the remaining girls were in home economics. And then it was just like the thing. I was like, okay, cool. That's how it's going to be, I guess. So yeah, I definitely relate to like being a woman in tech. It's like just slim pickings of like just there are very few. But I don't know, it also does make me hopeful, right? Because I mean, I feel like I've seen growth, or maybe it's just also like working in the industry, and I work with like university recruiting at my job, kind of like just like outside duties thing. And so like, I attend some of like this events, some of this, workshops they have for like underrepresented minorities. And I see like efforts being made, and that does make me hopeful that, someday it won't be like this. Regarding being like an African or immigrant in tech, I'm going to actually point this down. And you see this is like Georgia Tech. I am doing an online master's program from Georgia Tech and working full time. And honestly, like it's a lot, but I feel like in some ways I wasn't left with much of a choice in terms of like a core major inspiration for doing this, and especially doing this together with work, right, is immigration, right? I'm just going to be frank and put that out there, right? Because H1B, like, I don't even need to tell Damola about like the H1B process, or maybe area too. Like H1B is a struggle, it's a thing, and I don't know, you just have to try and put your best foot out there. So doing an online master's program with the hopes that, it kind of helps me with that whole process, hopefully, fingers crossed I finish next year. And so, we see where that takes me, or that helps me there too.
Thank you for sharing those. And to ask a bit of a follow-up question to that, are there steps you can share with the group that you've taken to help you either better cope with some of these challenges or actually address them in your various spaces and environments?
I could go. Well, I would say to address them, again, I kind of try to change my view on these things that, these are obstacles. They're not like cues for me to not be in the industry anymore, if that makes sense. Not because I'm a woman, I'm not supposed to be here, not because I'm an immigrant, this is hard, so I should leave, all that. So, just see it as an obstacle and work on getting it out of the way. So, have allies, and this sounds cliche, but it is really helpful to have people who are backing you up, right? I was actually very involved with the College of Computing and Informatics at Drexel. I was like one of the Dean's ambassadors, so people who students who are trying to apply to Drexel or like be in computing, we would really encourage the women, and we talk to them and take them around campus and all that stuff. and we had a lot of initiatives for like women in computing, but we also had men within the group, right? I think that's really important. I don't think it makes sense to have, a group like a flock of women, just, we are women in computing, and not have those allies like the men, because we're trying to change how the other group looks at us, right? And not be like isolated, right, and secluded and do all this stuff by ourselves. We're looking for cooperation here. It's not like it's not a competition, right? Because it is seen as a competition, and it shouldn't be like that. As for the visa stuff, I left the US because the H-1B stuff was really not working for me. I was like, I don't think I want to do this thing. Sounds stressful. And also, I wanted to come to London anyway. But yeah, that's me.
I'm gonna be honest, been there. I haven't done that yet, but I have like legit looked up like Canadian immigration stuff. I'm like, I don't even know. I was at some point was thinking maybe I just apply in a year or like, see what happens. But I don't know. At this point, I think my perspective thing is just, I'm just going to leave it to the company and hope that, they sort that out, right, really. Because I think to some extent, like, if a company really wants you, like, they'll move mountains. They will figure things out, right? I have a mentor of mine, Babatunde. He was from Lagos. He works at Twitter too, and he, went through the whole 3 tiles. Actually, I think he somehow even applied 4 times, didn't get the H-1B process. He had a master's degree though, but like they unconventionally like just filed for a green card straight from an F1 visa, which they typically don't do. So it's like, like if worse come to worse, like, like if they want you there, like if you, and they can do something about it, they will. And so, I don't know. I feel like you can take steps in between to like, try to make sure you have a plan B, plan C, all of that. But also lastly, like, like there's only so much you can do, right? And if you spend a lot of time worrying, stressing, I don't know like how helpful or really good that is for your health in general too. But I definitely agree in terms of like having like allies and like having communities, and that's something I've tried to do, like specifically like at work. We have this thing called BRGs, business resource groups. We have one for women, we have one for Black people at Twitter, we have one for parents, we have like a bunch of them. But personally, like I go to ones that I identify with, and it goes to a couple more to like be allies for other communities too. And I would definitely say they've helped, right? Because it's definitely like a different look when like, like on your team, you're the only Black person or like you're the only woman, and like that's what you like experience on day to day. But like, maybe once in 2 weeks or once a week or once in a month, however frequent you have, this events from like, BRGs, you like pop in there and like see many people that look like you and they still work at the same company you do. And it really just lifts up your spirits. And I think that is important. Because I can see how, just doing the same thing day to day, day in, day out with people who you don't, I guess, feel like you relate to, or that, feel like, they can't relate to you or your story or your journey or your struggle. I can see how that isn't a great thing or isn't a good thing. So yeah, definitely +1 in terms of like finding your people, finding your community, and sticking to that.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what you said about, not stressed out and there's only so much you can do. I think that's absolutely true. Especially, apparently, immigration is the hardest in the US from what I see. In Canada, it's, easy-ish. In the UK, also quite easy. So I think the best thing is to not have such like a tunnel view. There's a lot of other countries in the world you could go to. And again, if a company really wants to, but I mean, only big, really super big companies can do the, move mountains for you, right? With all the funding that they have. But I think just keep an open mind is super important. I see my friends stressing the hell out about staying in the US. And I'm like, well, you can go back one day. Like if you don't get your H-1B in the 3rd try, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. There's a lot of other countries you can go to. Just, don't just, focus on that one thing. Again, have a plan A through D if possible, and be happy with them, because, you never know if you're focused on this one specific thing, it might not be the best thing for you. I mean, it might be a good thing, maybe not the best thing, but you kind of overlooked everything else. So.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So I have two more questions. Then we are gonna open it to the larger audience in case anybody has additional questions. One is focused on career, and in the tech space, tech keeps changing every day. What are steps you take in each of your respective fields to make sure you're ahead of the curve and not being left behind by the ever-changing environment?
I think for this, something I employ is really just like a mindset of like growth in terms of like just, but that is applicable in different ways in terms of like even just, when you go through college, like college is really just you learning about stuff, right? And then you come into the industry and then there are new programming languages or new tools or new systems. Again, you have to learn, you have to absorb all of that. You switch positions, you level up, go to a higher rank or become a senior suite, then there's a whole lot more that starts being in your radar. Like for instance, like managing teams or like, like dealing with other things that you really weren't doing when you were like just a junior developer. So I think honestly, I think things I would apply in terms of like making sure like I'm on track and like, I'm keeping up with tech changing is really just things I apply in general too. It's just like having that mindset and like, knowing that things are changing and, trying your best to keep up, right? And I think that's mainly it. Personally, also kind of like, as I mentioned, grad school. And so I feel like that helps some. I mean, probably not all my classes directly translate to like what I'm doing or like, something I would want to do in the future. But I do think it's still kind of like just a cool thing to like have a, get like a variety of like things of like, oh, what's out there in tech, right? But yeah, I think really just keeping that growth mindset at work. And, if it's articles, if it's publications, if it's, conferences, typically it depends on the company, but they're usually like happy to, help support you to do all of this growth and learning too. So take advantage of that if your company does offer that.
Thanks for that. Super great points as usual. In my case, I would say it's reading. Research just never stops. It's insane, almost really terrifying sometimes because there's all this stuff out there and you sit at a meeting and these people are talking and you have no idea what's going on. And you have to go back and read 10 papers and maybe you understand 1% of what they've been talking about. So I think it's good to keep that mindset of, I don't know most things and it's fine. But I'm also willing to read all these things. So like actually today and yesterday, right before this meeting, I was at a conference about psychedelics. I don't do any, but the brain and psychedelics. And I'm really interested in cognition, specifically in neuroscience. The psychedelics group is right above me, right? Like floor wise. But it was like, it had nothing to do with me, but it was really nice to kind of like keep that into like my, just attend stuff and read and talk to all these people. And also I think it's important to keep like in your network, keep the network as versatile as possible, basically. Because if you're hanging out with the same people who have the same opinions as you and use the same tools as you, you're probably not going to go that far, right? So I think that's super important, especially in the realm of research, I found, because you meet people who have been doing the same thing for 10 years, and they're convinced that it's the best way, right? But, 10 other packages got released like over the past 5 years and they didn't know about it. But because, they're so, deadbeat on, my thing is the best. So, yeah. I think it goes the same for like, research, tech, everything really.
Awesome. And last one very quickly. What have you done for fun in the middle of the quarantine? We know it's a bit different now when people can't go out. Just very quickly, what have you guys been able to do for fun to stay sane?
Yeah, sanity is a very, very rare currency right now. Go ahead, Asia.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I kind of started going into, like, photography. So, yeah, that's something I've been doing. Landscape, mostly. I'll try to see if I have, like, a photo up here, but I have it on, like, my work Google Meet, so I can't see it as a background. But
that's cool. Do you go outside, like, so you just are you where? So which city are you based in?
So I'm currently based in Laramie, Wyoming. I stayed in my college town. Ideally, pandemic being over and everything, or like if or when, okay, maybe I should stop being, when the pandemic gets over, I will be moving to the Boulder area because that's where my office is located, Boulder, Colorado.
Nice. Cool. I love photography. Actually, I do that as well, but I use an actual a vintage film camera. So I have no idea if the pictures I'm taking are good or not right now. And I'm using a black and white film, so I'm really excited to develop them. And it snowed last week in London, and so shooting black and white in snow must be nice. I've also started embroidery. Like an old lady, I would sit there for 6 hours and just embroider, and really feels like meditation. I paint, I draw, I have my keyboard right behind me. But yeah, I try to do things off screen, honestly, because, working from home, you kind of lose those boundaries of 9 to 5 work. You get lost in it, end up the day super frustrated, and then, same thing again the next day. So whenever I can get off the screen, get off my phone, and just do something like the older generations used to do.
I am the opposite. I have increased my screen time. Me and my college friends.
Oh no!
It's not work related screen time. Me and my college friends, we used to game a lot, play FIFA in school. But when I started working, that kind of went down, and now it picked up again. So once every other weekend, we all play FIFA and Zoom for 5 hours at a stretch.
That's nice. I mean, there's an element of socializing there, so that's nice. I'm doing all these things because I don't see anyone, literally no one. So, yeah.
Okay.
Sure. One question for you: PS or Xbox?
PlayStation. All do it.
Okay.
I'll do it.
Okay. No further.
Now we are gonna open it up to the audience for questions. If you're comfortable, I believe you should be able to unmute your mic to ask a question. If not, you can paste it in the chat, and I can help read them out to Hajar and Aisha.
Hi everyone, my name is Majrita and I'm a computer science major and a political science minor. And I just wanted to, you guys are really inspiring to me, and I just wanted to know what your advice about internships and that kind of stuff is, and also how I always feel like whenever I'm applying to stuff, I might not have all the qualifications and just how to deal with that space.
Hi, thank you for attending. So I think it's completely fine to apply for jobs where you think you don't have 100% of the qualifications, right? I think very few recruiters, they just put the thing out there and they're like, well, if someone had 100% of it, then that's great, but these are the main things that we want, right? Also, a lot of employers really look for how fast you learn, right? How willing you are to learn, how willing you are to be in a new environment, and if that doesn't bother you, and if actually it encourages you to do more things, then honestly, that's better than that extra skill that you could have had, right? So that's an advice that I could do. Don't be scared to apply. You got nothing to lose. I know everyone says this, but it's really true. Sometimes I wish I applied for some things I didn't apply to. So just put yourself out there.
+1 to what you said, I really do agree. And something that came to my head the moment you asked that was kind of a quote from, I actually don't remember who at this point, but it says you miss 100% of the chances you don't take. That's just number one. And number two, honestly, this whole application thing, it is a numbers game to some extent, right? You really the more you apply to, the better chances you have, I feel like. I remember my first internship, I legit probably applied to 70 plus places. It got to the extent where when I finally got an email from someone back, it was ANSYS, which is where I ended up interning, but I got an email from someone saying, oh, hi, Aisha, blah, blah, blah. And I honestly had to like go look because I like, have a folder where I like dump a bunch of like the applications, the applications I've applied or places I've applied to. And I had to go search it, like, did I apply to this company? Because I couldn't even remember at that point. Like, it was like I had applied to so many things, like I couldn't even keep track at that point to some extent, right? So that's definitely one thing in terms of like really like kind of like also she said, like you probably like it's more likely for you to be in a situation where you're like, oh, I wish I had applied for this versus, oh, actually, I wish I didn't apply for this, right? It's like, right, what's the harm? And I guess that also kind of goes into in terms of like getting rejections or things like that. Like really something I try to keep in mind is you only need one. Like honestly, like all you need is one. And if you keep going, like that one will surely come, right? It's only a matter of time.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Love that. So we have one in the chats and from Salamata. And the question goes, in what ways do you think computer science is different from computer engineering, especially when it comes to jobs?
Gotcha. That's a good question. From my understanding, I think computer engineering is computer science plus some in terms of like, so I guess my college experience with computer engineering was we had to take like EE classes and then we had to take some computer science classes too. And so at this point, it was a thing where based on the computer science classes we like needed to take, I think I only needed like 1 or 2 more to declare a minor in computer science. So I did that. But anyways, my point is, I think schools approach it differently in terms of like, I guess, getting the degree. But generally, like computer engineering, from my experience, is electrical engineering and computer science. And then computer science is mainly programming, right? So like some of the things I work with is kind of like the mixture of like, you know, programming and also hardware. So like a big thing I was involved with in terms of research in school was Arduino microcontrollers and like Raspberry Pi. So like Raspberry Pis were like, you know, credit card sized computers, you know, they had their own operating system and all of that. But also they had like hardware, so like you could attach, you know, like LEDs, switches, you know, you could like attach physical things to them and like, you know, work with those physical things in addition to like just programming and let's say, you know, like building a website or like things that are usually just online. Like computer engineering had also that that human aspect to it too, right? I also like, you know, work with the humanoid robots, so like that's also kind of something that's more, I feel, computer engineering, you know, because it's also that component of like a physical layer to it. In terms of the industry, in terms of like jobs, honestly, I think then it depends, right? Because like I did computer engineering, but like my work right now as a software engineer is, I would say, just based on like computer science knowledge or like computer science things, right? I work with people who study computer science, right? I really don't get to apply like, you know, electrical engineering aspects to my specific job, right? But I do think there are jobs that does come in handy. Like my first internship was at ANSYS, and ANSYS is a circuit simulation software company. So like for instance, if any of you have worked with like circuit maker or something like that, right? Where you are like, oh, I want to plug in this, you know, resistor, attach this to this, you know, power source, and I want to like see, you know, how much output, how much voltage it gives, things like that. So, like that was what the company did. And in that sense, I could see like there was a need for like electrical engineering background, right? Because some of the classes are like circuits and signals, electronics, you know, like those needed those kind of knowledge, even though it was still programming, but like those were still like knowledge that were required. Versus just, you know, a more native computer science job where it's like I'm just mainly programming, I don't want to say general stuff, but like more not niche or electrical engineering niche specific things. Does that answer your question, Salmata? I'm happy to talk more if that doesn't, but otherwise, that's it.
She said, yes, it does. Thank you. So we are at time currently, but do we have any other additional questions in the audience before we call today?
Yes. I have a question for Aisha.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Hello,
Yeah.
Kaja.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. Good to see you.
Yeah,
good to see
you
live.
too.
Good to see you live. Yeah. I have a question for Aisha. Good day, Aisha. I'm busy in Abuja too, so it's nice to hear that someone in Abuja is doing great at Twitter. Really nice to hear. Yeah, so I'm currently a backend junior developer at Java. So hearing that you do Scala, it's really nice to hear because I think they have similar stuff. So what I observe is at my current job as a Java engineer, there are challenges I have. I'm a back-end engineer, so the challenges I have with some basic concepts. I thought I knew these things, but while I'm working at the current job now, I get to see that there are loopholes that I have to cover. So right now, I'm juggling between going for a paid course, like actually paying for a course to brush up on my Java, or just take up tutorials and look this up. But I just don't know. Which to take because it's really bugging me. I don't know if I could just stick to my evening routine where I look at these materials on my own, as well as look at other tasks that I have for the next stand-up the next day. So I'm just shaky about what to do right now at this point. Yeah.
I guess I would kind of ask, like, based on, like, it sounds like you've been, like, looking at materials online for some time. Has that helped? Can you look back at, like, okay, well, yes, I knew how to do XYZ based on this, online free resources? Or have you been like, okay, I have learned absolutely nothing from this?
Okay, so what's happening is there's some tasks I have at the office. I have normally you might not know how to do them, but I always find a way to Google these things and solve the particular tasks. I want to go from a place where I don't just have to Google this entire thing before solving them. I just know, I want to do XYZ. I know what to search for because I've known this concept. I've known how they work. I just have to search for that particular stuff. It's the random stuff. So I think that's where I am currently.
Gotcha. I think that makes sense. And I guess what I would recommend is really. So I guess my understanding is your question is between going for a paid course or like going for like free online material. I would say typically like explore what's out there. It's kind of like, I mean, if the materials are free and online, kind of like a thing right now, look into them and see if there are things that are applicable or could be applicable.
Sorry to cut you. When I said paid course, I mean paid physical classes.
Oh, paid physical classes, not paid online. Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. Paid physical classes in Nigeria.
Nigeria, yes, for weekends.
And that's where I have some skepticism. Like, I don't know. I think it really depends. Like, I don't know the specific like physical program you're talking about, but honestly, from my experience at University of Learning, I really didn't learn jack about like programming. Right? I don't know if that's changed in defense. It's been 4 years. Maybe that has changed. Maybe that has improved. But I feel like I know lots of friends who were still there, who like are still in college, and like they're always telling me like, oh, I'm doing this online course, I'm doing this online thing. Like I feel like there is just more out there and like just online resources. I don't know what like the specific paid course looks like and like how practical that's going to be and if that's actually going to help you. So I guess what is my recommendation? As my recommendation would be to look online, honestly, and see what's out there. And if you're like, okay, I really can't find anything specifically valuable to me that would help me get to where I'm trying to get to, then maybe try a paid course and see. I feel like if you do the paid course, you're like, you kind of know or don't know that it works for you, right? But also like with online, what you can do is you could also like do like a course. Like I think Udacity specifically like has like free courses, and you could like do a course where you do something like from beginning to end, and they have like a curriculum, they have like a theme. And I think what's usually difficult about that is really the consistency, right? Because you can be motivated and like start a course, but like it's like 1 week in, like you're not gonna like like still necessarily like be as motivated. It depends, it varies with people, right? But I can see how with the paid physical course, it's like my money is there, like I'm ready for my money there, like and
I think in programming you learn better with others, like paid learning. So you go to the classes. Like for somebody like me, I like being active in the classes, but for online classes, I don't get this activity. So in the classes, once I have a slight idea of how things should work, I just put it in front of the teacher's face. It always works for me. I just drop it there and disrupt the entire class. So it shakes the way things are flowing. So I get to tailor things the way I want. But online classes, the materials are just there. You just absorb this thing. But for physical classes, especially when it comes to programming, after trying out a few things at home, I could come to the class and once they're teaching, I'll be like, oh, I did this, it doesn't work like this. So what is this? So I get to tailor the class based on what I've researched on, and it always works. So this is why I'm having issues with these programming classes online and all that. I'm also the physical class, you're not paying for only the classes, you're paying for the network of these teachers, because whoever is taking programming classes is already working in the field.
That makes sense. So at this point, I think take the in-person class, give it a shot, see how it goes, and based on that, I mean, you always have the online class to fall back to. But I feel like I also wanted to mention something in regards to Masvita that asked the question regarding kind of like just applying, and I feel like something I forgot to mention was also like networking. I think is important, right? You know, build genuine connections with people, right? Like, you know, ask for referrals. While applying online and just randomly applying is a thing, it's a numbers game, but I feel like you go further with like a referral from someone, or like, also like just in terms of like knowing specific positions that align and fit with your interests, right? That's one thing. So I guess also along that line, I can drop like my LinkedIn tag, you know, if anyone is interested in a referral for an internship, full-time gig, let me know. Also, I was going to also bring up to the point where you said at times you feel like you don't have like all the skills or experience. Kind of like, as I said, like I didn't know Scala was a thing till I came in contact with Twitter. I definitely did not know about Scala, like, or like have experience in Scala. It's something I learned on the job, or something I'm still learning on the job. So at times when they're like, oh yeah, we need XYZ, like really, it's just learning or being willing to learn.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that.
Thank you guys for joining today. We've had a lot of great questions. We've had a lot of great answers. Thank you to our guests all that joined, and thank you to our Africode mentors, Hajar and Aisha, for allowing us to pick your brain for an hour today. This session was recorded, so all notes would be shared in the Africode forum. And if there are any questions you have for either Hajar or Aisha, feel free to post them in the forum, and I'm sure they will be happy to answer them. Thank you very much, guys. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. One thing I want to add, you guys, there's no one clear path in computer science, right? You can do computer science with anything else. Masvita is doing computer science and political science. Honestly, you can apply it to anything. Think of it as a tool more than an end, like something, you know, the goal. Like it's not the point. It's something that you could use on something else, and it's exponentially more powerful. So that's my 2 cents. And thanks for joining. Thanks for having us.
Actually, thank you for taking our time to do this. I'm really excited to see you all. Lanry, I'm really excited to see you. Yeah, goodness, I'm really good to see you. Hajar, it's good to see you. Good to finally place a face. Aisha, good to see you. And good to hear that you have actually perceived Abuja air just like I'm doing currently. It's really nice. And Movisa, good for you to be here. And Diary, good for you to I'm really